Hello and welcome back to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. I hope you're doing well. The sun has kind of gone away here in the UK. The summer has drawn to a close and we are now heading into the autumn, and it is my favourite time of year. I'm not a hot weather person, so when the sun goes away, Finn comes out to play. That sounds awful. I don't know why I just said that, but there you go, I did. So we've got a lot to cover on this episode. But as I said, this time of year is my favourite time of year weather-wise, but also theatre-wise. There's some weird buzz around this time of year that gets me really excited. So many things are announced, as you will hear over the next however many minutes that this goes on for. And also, so many things just kind of rejuvenate themselves with new casts, and it's just a very exciting time of year for theatre. And of course, the C word, Christmas. Shocking, but it is round the corner in the world of theatre, and panto announcements are here, there and everywhere. I won't be covering those just yet, don't you worry, but I will be fairly soon. So yes, it's the lead up to Christmas and a wonderful time of year for theatre where it's celebrated all across the country. So these next few months in the world of theatre up and down the country are always a really exciting time. Now I do apologise in advance because there are builders next door who are whacking away quite loudly. So if you hear them, I do apologise, but there's not much I can do about it. I've tried to muffle the noise, but it's really not working. I do hope if you are a regular listener that you have enjoyed the interviews that I've done so far with Kiana and also Lauren McClavey and then also Anne Harada as well. I really enjoy doing them and it's really interesting, and I've got a few exciting people coming up soon, one of which I'll speak about later. But yes, some exciting people coming on. I hope you're enjoying them, and I will plan to do many more. If that's what people like, then I will continue doing so. But now let's crack on with what I've been up to over the last couple of weeks. My family and I went along to the Brighton Hippodrome in Brighton, funnily enough, to have a look inside. And you might be thinking, that sounds really boring. But the Brighton Hippodrome has not been open as a theatrical venue for decades. And the last kind of 15 years, it's just been falling to pieces. It's completely derelict, really. And it was a bingo hall for a very long time. It was a bingo hall, I think, for longer than it was a theatrical venue, which is slightly mad. But it was fascinating to be able to go inside before they close the theatre for 2 years of renovations before it reopens for the Brighton Fringe Festival in a couple of years' time. It is a beautiful building. They've spent quite a lot of money already on the roof and the ceiling. I did a TikTok about it. So if you search me up on TikTok, you will find the video, and there's clips in there of the inside. But it's just a stunning building, and they did all that roof work to keep it kind of structurally sound and to prevent any further water damage and just damage inside, because it is like a building site. I'm surprised we were allowed to go in the building because it's great, but it's slightly scary to be in there. But it's just amazing. It's huge and it's going to be absolutely stunning. And I am so glad that it's kind of having a bit of a renaissance and it's going to return as a theatrical venue, because it's just so important. I spoke about this a lot, about historical buildings and how important it is for the upkeep of them. And this is a prime example of when the money is invested, there's clearly an interest, because there were so many people. It was free to enter all day and it was just constantly busy and full of people. They had someone singing in a box, which was the first live performance at the Brighton Hippodrome since the 60s. I think it was since Chuck Berry or someone like that. It was crazy. So I'm really excited to see where that goes, and more people need to get behind this project, because then when it reopens it can continue to be a big success. I also went to Chichester to see their new production of Oliver at the Festival Theatre. Now, I've probably spoken before about my love for Chichester as a venue. I always love it, and their level of production and their standards are so high. It's very, very, very rare that I've left a production at Chichester and gone, oh, that was bad. I don't think it's ever happened. It's just another level. I love it, and I love being close to it enough that I can go and visit and see these brilliant productions before they eventually go to Broadway or the West End or tour or whatever. But Oliver, on the other hand, is a show that I don't particularly enjoy. I never have done. I find it quite boring. I always have. I found the story quite boring, the songs a bit boring. It's overtly long, and it's never really done anything for me. So I wasn't ecstatic about having to sit through 2.5 hours of Oliver. I kind of went into it with a bit of a tinted view, let's say, and it wasn't probably the best way to go into watching the show because I already had negative thoughts about it, as did my friend Emma, who came with me. Neither of us are the biggest Oliver fan. I have seen it, I've seen the film, and I've seen many amateur productions. I've been in it. I played Mr. Sowbury and Dr. Grimwig. I was meant to play Oliver, but I ended up playing the other parts because my voice broke, but that's another story. Maybe it stems from that. Maybe it stems from that horrible time when Oliver got taken away from me. So I can't do it anymore. I can't deal with it. But I just find the show very boring and I've never really enjoyed it. So I was nervous and I thought that if anyone could make me enjoy Oliver, it would be Chichester because of their production standards and because of the cast they got. And I'd never seen a professional production of Oliver, so maybe that was why I'd never enjoyed it. Who knows? But I sat down and I thought, right, let's do this. And it was a really great production of the show, directed and choreographed by Matthew Bourne. It was really interesting to watch. I thought it was quite an interesting set. I thought the choreography was interesting. I thought some of the staging was quite interesting. And it was a really good production of Oliver. I loved Simon Lipkin as Fagin. He was by far the stand-up performance of the night. I thought he was the best person in it, and not saying that the other principals weren't great because they were also brilliant. The standard across the principals was very strong. The cast as a whole was very strong, but Simon Lipkin just stood out for me. But that is probably because Fagin as a character is on for basically the whole show. I forgot about some of the songs in it, and when you actually sit and watch the show as a whole, you go, oh, that song is nice. Oh, that song is nice. But some of them I'm a bit... The thing is, with any show like Oliver, the songs have been played and performed by so many people over the years. And the amount of times I've seen someone sing Consider Yourself or Where Is Love or whatever, they do get a bit draining. But they are still lovely songs. And it was sold out and the audience absolutely loved it. I was disappointed in the lack of dog. Bullseye did not make an appearance on stage. It was just kind of a projection or shadow. But apart from that, he didn't feature. And I was hoping for a real-life dog. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. And it'll be interesting to see how this production works in London because it is transferring at the end of this year to the Gielgud. And obviously Chichester is a thrust stage, so the set was really kind of protruding and lots of different levels and a big revolve, and they're going to have to kind of squash that onto the Gielgud stage, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. As much as this was a wonderful production of Oliver, it didn't change my opinion on the show as a whole. I still don't really enjoy the show, and I still find it quite boring, and the thing is, I would recommend anyone who loves Oliver to go and see this production because it was a really good production, but personally, I just find the story not very interesting. So that's just kind of my take on what I thought about the show. I think my issues with it do stem from the storyline is a bit all over the place for me because Oliver is meant to be the main character. He's the title character, but about halfway through Act 1, we forget about him, and it just focuses on Fagin, Nancy and Bill, and I don't necessarily particularly care for their story arcs. Same with the Sowburys. I know I did, as I said, play Mr. Sowbury, and it's fun to play, but as a character, you get a 20-25-minute section with songs and big scenes with Noah Claypole and all those weird characters who don't really have any relevance to the rest of the show, but we get such a big segment on them, and they don't really matter at all, and I just think it's very oddly written and paced as a show. I'm not a big fan of shows that break the fourth wall a lot, or characters that break the fourth wall, so when Fagin does a lot of his kind of nudge to the audience and things, it kind of just takes you out of it, and I don't think I'm a fan of that. It kind of takes you out of the moments in the show, and it feels a bit it always feels a bit panto-esque, and I think that's just the writing compared to anything else. And also the lack of, for me, I love a show with strong female leads, and I think as a gay person that might be, I don't know, I think it is a bit of a thing that lots of gay men gravitate to shows with strong female leads. I'm not really sure why, but it is kind of a thing, and that is the type of show that I've always gravitated to, and the ones that I would always want to go and watch over others. But this show does lack in many strong female characters. Yes, you have Nancy, but she doesn't appear till the end of Act 1, and she sings a few songs and then she dies. So I feel a bit sorry for Nancy, really, but but it's very male dominated as a show, and for me that's not necessarily my preference. I prefer female led shows. So yes, I conflicting views on Oliver. A really great production, really well directed, brilliant cast. But the show, personally, is not for me. But if you love Oliver, do make sure you catch it in the West End, because it will be a hit. And Oliver consistently comes back. And someone commented on my TikTok the other day and asked, why does it keep coming back? Why do we keep getting revivals of Oliver every 10 years? It's because it sells, and it's because it does really well and the public love it. It might not be the show that you want to go and watch, like myself, and it might not be a show that necessarily needs another revival when it was only on in 2009, 2010, but it sells and it makes money, and at the end of the day, it's a business and you have to make money somehow, and Oliver is always going to be a moneymaker wherever you do it, so that's why it's done so regularly and is always very well received. And it's good that this production is a new production and not the same production that we've seen over the last 20-25 years, so it kind of again re-injects new life into an older show, which I am always here for. Now, moving on to some theatre news now, and probably the biggest theatre news of this week is the death of James Earl Jones, the actor who died at the age of 93. He was a titan of the acting industry, both on stage and on screen. His career was vast, and I thought I'd take you through a few facts and figures about his career and kind of celebrate what he's done. On Broadway, he appeared in over 20 productions over many, many decades, and he won 2 Tony Awards, the first for The Great White Hope and the second for Fences. He was nominated for another 2 Tonys in the Best Lead Actor in a Play category for On Golden Pond and The Best Man, which he starred in alongside Angela Lansbury. He received the Lifetime Achievement Tony in 2017, and then in 2022, the Court Theatre, which was the theatre where James Earl Jones made his Broadway debut, was renamed the James Earl Jones Theatre in his honour, and he got to see it, and I love that he was here to be able to witness a Broadway theatre being named after him. And what a legacy to have a Broadway venue named after you. That is just crazy, and what a joyous thing for him to have, and what a joyous thing for everyone to be able to remember him by. He also received the Lifetime Achievement Oscar, and he is also a 3-time Emmy winner, 2 Primetime Emmys and 1 Daytime Emmy. He is also a Golden Globe winner, and he is also a Grammy winner, so he's kind of an EGOT if you count his honorary Oscar. Kind of. That's sometimes a bit of an argument whether someone's an EGOT or not if you include honorary things, but he basically is. His theatre credits elsewhere include at the Delacourt Theatre in Central Park, and also many appearances in the West End over the years as well, including Driving Miss Daisy, which he did on Broadway and in London with Vanessa Redgrave, and then did a tour of Australia with Angela Lansbury. What wonderful people to work all together. He's also known for voicing Darth Vader in the Star Wars film series, and also the voice of Mufasa in The Lion King. That's what he's most well known for, is those 2 roles, especially Star Wars. But his credits are just insane. He's done so many films and so many TV programs and so much stuff on stage. Just a truly legendary actor with a truly wonderful career, and he'll be missed by many, many, many people. But like when Angela Lansbury died, another kind of really just kind of huge star of the entertainment industry, there's so much to remember them by, because so much of their work was preserved on film and on recordings and this, that and the other, that it doesn't ever feel like you can't ever see them do anything again, if that makes sense. And I love that, and I think it's really wonderful that so much of his work was captured for many people to appreciate in decades to come. Now, there has been a lot of new shows announced in the last few weeks, so I'm going to try and give you the rundown on as many as I can, starting off with Clueless. So this is the musical of the 1995 film of the same name, and it's set to run in the West End early next year. It's scored by Katie Tunstall and will have lyrics by Glenn Slater, who's known for his lyrics for Sister Act and Tangled. It's a completely new version compared to the jukebox version, which ran off-Broadway in 2018, and it's completely different now with an original score, which is always wonderful to hear because jukebox musicals are done quite regularly, and it's nice to have an original score to a musical. It had a tryout earlier on this year in Bromley, which kind of went a bit quietly, I feel. I feel like not many people either went to see it or it just didn't really have much buzz in the press, but now it's going to London. Of course it will. It's opening at the Trafalgar Theatre on the 15th of February, and it's currently booking till June. But it might extend, it might not. Who knows? But I don't know if I've seen Clueless. I think I have, but I don't really remember it. So if I do go and see it, I might brush up on the film before I go. But it has such a big cult following, a bit like Heathers, in the sense that lots of people kind of grew up watching that film, and the same with Mean Girls as well, so it will have probably a very similar demographic and a very similar audience who will go and see all these shows, so it will make for quite an interesting time to see if it runs as well as Heathers and Mean Girls. Fresh from the Edinburgh Fringe, I Wish You Well, the Gwyneth Paltrow ski trial musical, will run in the West End at the Criterion from the 11th of September to the 12th of October. So this is starring Diana Vickers as Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's about the infamous ski trial between Gwyneth Paltrow and Terry Sanderson, which was kind of all over the press a couple of years ago, and it was all a bit mad and all a bit bizarre, and it really caught the public's attention. But I believe this is one of two musicals based on this, because there was another one recently in the UK, I think in London, based on the exact same situation, on the same trial. But this one, I Wish You Well, is going to the West End, and it's choreographed by Arlene Phillips, which is so fun. But I will want to go and see that because I'm so intrigued about how they've turned that into a musical in any way, but clearly it got really good reviews at the Fringe and people seem to love it, so it seems like just a fun, silly concept for a musical, and sometimes that's all you need. Following the closure of I Wish You Well, Titanic will be opening at the Criterion, so this is an off-Broadway hit that combines Celine Dion and her music with the blockbuster movie Titanic. And it has been huge in New York. It's done so well, and I constantly see clips of it on TikTok and Instagram. It's everywhere, and it looks camp and chaotic, and again, just so much fun and just completely off the wall. And again, I think this could do really well, and the Criterion is a smaller space, and since the long-running stuff has kind of stopped going to the venue, they've done some really good shorter runs of musicals and plays there, and it seems to work really well, and it's a really nice business model to have in the West End. This is opening on the 9th of December, and I don't think it's got a closure as of yet. I might be wrong, but I think it's kind of indefinitely going to be there. Who knows? But I'm really intrigued by this as well. So two very camp and bizarre subjects for musicals opening at the Criterion this year. Kate Blanchett and Tom Burke will star in Chekhov's The Seagull, I know that's a turn of events from what we were just talking about, for only 6 weeks at the Barbican in February next year. 6 weeks! 6 weeks! That's nothing. That's such a short run, but it will sell because Kate Blanchett's in it. I'd quite like to go. I don't know if I'd enjoy Chekhov's The Seagull. I'm not too sure if it's a play that's going to be up my alley, but I'd like to see her in something. But I think I might struggle to get tickets. And I looked today at how you get the tickets, and it goes to Barbican Members Plus 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 on this day, and then Barbican Members Plus, and then Barbican Members Premium, and then Barbican Members, and then so there's about 5 or 6 days before it goes on priority booking, and then before it goes on general booking. So I think a lot of the tickets will have gone to Barbican members before they get released to the public, but I'm sure they'll keep some back for us measly audience members who don't have memberships to the Barbican. But there are, I think, 100 tickets priced at £20 at every single performance, which is really good. And I hope that they're not available to Barbican members not in a horrible way, but I hope they're the ones that are kept back for public booking. But yes, if you want to see Kate Blanchett or Tom Burke in a Chekhov, then February is going to be the time for that. I spoke briefly about the success of Heathers here in the UK earlier, and now it's going to New York. This production that has been such a success here in the UK over the last kind of 6-7 years is going to be opening in New York in 2025, and that's all the information we have currently. It's unclear whether it's going to be off-Broadway or on Broadway, but I think it will do well, maybe not as well as it's done over here. It's just become a huge kind of juggernaut over here, but I think the US... It's been a while since Heathers was seen over there, so I think it's time that they get this production. I don't know if it will do well if it goes to Broadway. I think that's quite a big ask, but I think it will do really well if it goes off Broadway, but who am I to say? I don't know really what the logistics are of it all, but Broadway is an expensive business, so it'll be interesting to see how that does over in New York. But it's been a long time coming. I'm surprised this hasn't happened a lot sooner considering the success. So there you go, Heathers will be opening sometime next year somewhere in New York. White Rabbit, Red Rabbit, which is a play that I spoke about a couple of weeks ago where they get an envelope in the middle of the stage, they've never been directed, and one celebrity goes on stage, opens the envelope and reads the script for the first time and has to perform it to the audience there and then. It's a brilliant concept, and they had some brilliant people in the lineup to perform the show, and now they've extended the run into November, and they've announced even more stars, a whole other load of people who are going to be involved in this production, such as Toby Jones, Matt Lucas, Miriam Margolyes, which is already sold out, Paloma Faith, Stockard Channing, Minnie Driver, Lenny Henry, and many, many more. Go and look up the list because you can find your favourite performers in there. I need to actually book my tickets. I keep saying, I must go. And by the time I go to book, all the people I want to see keep selling out. So I need to actually get on that. But if you want to see those stars or any of the others that are performing, make sure you book your tickets fast. The little-known musical Fiorello will be getting a one-night benefit concert with three-time Tony nominee Christopher Fitzgerald in the leading role. So you may be thinking, why am I mentioning this? But Fiorello won the 1960 Tony for Best Musical, and it tied with The Sound of Music. It's the only tie for Best Musical in the history of the Tonys, and it beat Gypsy. It was up against Gypsy and a couple of other shows, including Once Upon a Mattress, to take home the Tony for Best Musical. And Gypsy didn't win, which baffles me, but Fiorello and Sound of Music both did. And also Fiorello won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. So as much as it's a lesser-known show, it's won some major awards, but it isn't seen that regularly. But if you were in New York on the 7th of October this year, make sure you try and catch that benefit concert. Hairspray's original leading ladies on Broadway. The show itself is meant to be having a revival next year at some point, I think, but that's off topic. Anyway, the original leading ladies, Laura Bell Bundy, Marissa Jarrett Winokur, and Kerry Butler, have reunited for this tour that they've done called Mama, I'm a Big Girl Now, which is them telling stories and singing songs from the show and mashups from other shows that they've done, and it seems really wonderful, and I want it to come to the UK, but it's going to do a run off Broadway for a limited engagement at the New World Stages beginning November the 2nd with an opening night on November the 13th, and it will run till December the 8th. And as I said, it's been touring the country this past year, and I'd just love to see those three together. All of them have gone on to do wonderful things, like Laura Bell Bundy did Legally Blonde, Marissa Jarrett Winokur won Big Brother, and Kerry Butler's done Mean Girls, she's done Beetlejuice, she's done Xanadu, she's done loads. So it would be a really lovely evening to see those three women together. So yes, once it's done in New York, please bring it over to the UK. I'm asking very politely. And a production that I've covered quite a lot on the podcast, Sunset Boulevard, the production in Australia starring Sarah Brightman, has announced it will be touring Asia next year. So this production has been in the press for lots of reasons, mainly not very good ones, for cutting down performances and Sarah Brightman being off because I think she broke her foot. And then they released a trailer last week which was clearly very heavily edited, both singing wise and kind of visually. It was all a bit bizarre. So it's been in the press quite a lot over reasons that it probably shouldn't be, but it's clearly doing well now, and it's going to Asia, and Sarah Brightman's making her Asia debut, as she said, on the Asian tour, but that is seemingly having further life. Who knows? Maybe it'll end up coming to Europe. I doubt it, but maybe the tour will. Maybe it'll play a few European dates at some point, but maybe they're too scared because British critics are quite harsh, and they are quite mean about things. And they've been mean about it already, and it's not even playing in the UK at all. So I dread to think what would happen if it came over here, but yes, that production's having further life next year, so look out for more drama about that. And a Broadway show will be closing in December. The Notebook, based upon the very popular film, will be closing later this year after 317 regular performances. And as I said before, it's going to be having a national tour that starts next year, so it's not quite the end for The Notebook just yet. A few random tidbits of information for you here. We have a new world record-breaking musical. Well, not a new musical, but a new production of a musical. The National Youth Music Theatre has broken the record for the most complete costume changes in a lead theatrical role for its production of Our House. So the role of Joe Casey gets changed quite a lot, and this record was previously held by the costume designer of the original London production of Our House, when Joe Casey had 29 complete costume changes, and this new production has broken that record with 37 complete costume changes. And there is a full recording of the original West End production, I think, that was done for the BBC, and he literally, in the original show, would walk behind a panel or a wall and would go from wearing black to white, because I think there's good Joe and bad Joe. I think that's what happens. I was actually meant to play this part a few years ago at college, but COVID curtailed it. I mean, I wasn't right. I really wasn't right. I'm a bit too camp to play Joe Casey, I have to say. But I was meant to play this part at some point, so it's a role I will never get to play, unfortunately, but I was miscast. Equity's campaign against Spotlight for its fees for its kind of directory has now been backed unanimously by the TUC, so this kind of gives it another boost with a lot more support behind it, and hopefully this campaign by Equity does end up going further and going to court, and this can be rectified, because the fees are expensive. I didn't know how expensive it was to have a Spotlight account, and you can be paying for Spotlight and then not even get a single audition for it, but still have to pay, I can't remember, I think it was about 180 or nearly 200 quid a year, which is just insane. That's a lot of money to lose out on, especially when you're not getting anything from it. What's the point in spending all that money on it? But with Spotlight being such a large part of the theatre industry, there needs to be some sort of resolution to this, but this is a step in the right direction at least. And Pasek and Paul have now achieved EGOT status after winning an Emmy for their tune Which of the Pickwick Triplets Did It from Only Murders in the Building. Now, if you haven't watched Only Murders in the Building, you are missing out. It's a brilliant TV series, and the new season, season 4, is being released every Tuesday at the moment, at time of recording, and it's just marvellous. I love it. But they have now reached EGOT status. They won their Tony and Grammy for Dear Evan Hansen, and they've also won their second Tony for producing A Strange Loop, and they won an Oscar for City of Stars for La La Land. So now, altogether, they are EGOT, but they now join a very long list of other composers and actors and performers who have achieved that kind of pinnacle status. A bit of film news for you, and it's not really film, it's just more about filming of some wonderful shows here in the West End. So The Importance of Being Earnest is going to be filmed at the National and released in cinemas in February 2025. A lot's happening in February next year. It's going to be an exciting time, and I can't wait to be able to possibly go and see this. It's selling so well at the National because it's got Ncuti Gatwa in it and Sharon D. Clarke, and just going to be, I think, a really brilliant production of this show. So if you can't get to see it in person, you'll be able to see it in cinemas. Next to Normal has been filmed at the Wyndham's Theatre in its final weeks in the West End. There's been no further details about this, but it will be I assume released at a later date, but we will have to wait to find out a bit more. And also Kiss Me Kate has been filmed at the Barbican for a future cinema release, much like they did with Anything Goes there, and that will be out soon again with further details coming our way. And also on top of that, Waitress, which was filmed on Broadway in 2021, is now available to rent and buy on streaming services here in the UK. So a lot of filmed theatre coming your way over the next few months. A bit of TV news that has been confusing quite a lot of people on social media. So it's been announced that Phantom of the Opera is set for a TV adaptation, but this is Phantom of the Opera, the book, not Phantom of the Opera, the musical. And I think a lot of this confusion stems from the fact that all the articles are using the Phantom of the Opera Broadway poster or the logo with the mask, which is confusing a lot of people, especially as well because the person supposedly at the helm of this is Kenny Ortega, who was behind High School Musical, Descendants, the This Is It Michael Jackson tour. He's done a lot, and I'm glad that he's behind this project because I really do like what he does, but it's not the Phantom that we know, it's not the musical, it's an adaptation of the Phantom book, and apparently the hopes are that it's going to become a bit of a franchise like Descendants as well, so be interesting to see how that's going to work in a completely different context. It's so well known as the musical, and to do a TV series that isn't based on that with someone who's known for doing musical theatre is slightly confusing, but it is new and separate, but it could be quite interesting to see how that pans out. It's never too early to talk about Christmas, even though earlier I said it is quite early to talk about Christmas, but we have a new Christmas album announcement from Lea Salonga. So this is her first Christmas album in 20 years, and it's called Sounding Joy, and it's out on November 1st. It will include songs like All I Want for Christmas Is You, Last Christmas, This Christmas, plus many, many more. And I love her voice. I'm so sad I didn't get to see her in her recent concert tour of the UK, and I'm pinching myself I didn't, but I did get to see her in Sondheim Old Friends, and it was marvellous seeing her be Mrs. Lovett in that. So yes, a Christmas album coming your way, but we won't mention Christmas again this episode, I do promise. Let's round off this episode talking about some casting news. There has been a lot, so this is a bit of a summary of what's been going on. But I want to talk first about the full cast for the Les Mis Arena Tour, which is having Bonnie Langford, Gavin Lee, who else is in it? Michael Ball, Alfie Boe. It's crazy the amount of people in it. But my wonderful friend Andrew Maxwell is also in this production, which is really exciting. He's been keeping me updated about how it's been going, and hopefully once the tour is up and running, he will be joining us on the podcast to talk about it all and what's been going on and his time doing this kind of crazy international arena tour, which is going here, there and everywhere. So big round of applause for Andrew. Moving on from that, Beanie Feldstein and Kevin McHale, Noah Galvin and Bonnie Milligan are set to be some of the cast for the new Kennedy Center production of the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is playing from the 11th to the 20th of October. Now, I didn't know much about this show, and I saw it at GSA when the actor musicians did it, and it's a really fun show, and it's really cool how the audience are used so regularly. There's a brilliant clip of when Julie Andrews was pulled up on stage in, I think, the original Broadway run. And I think they ask her to spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and I think she gets it wrong. I don't know if on purpose or not, but if you can find that clip, do go and watch it, because it always makes me laugh. Jane Krakowski and Neil Patrick Harris have joined the cast of Shipmeet Fan off-Broadway. Now, this is based on a film called Passing Strange from 2016, and the cast already in this off-Broadway run includes the likes of Deborah Messing and Constance Wu, so it's a really packed cast with a really strong group of people in it. The initial casting has also been announced for the UK production of The Producers, with Andy Nyman fresh from his performance as Horace Vandergelder in Hello Dolly as Max Bialystock, and Mark Antolin as Leo Bloom, and it will also feature Harry Morrison and Joanna Woodward, who I saw in The Time Traveller's Wife. So now the initial casting is out. I'm excited about this revival of The Producers and to see how they do it in that interesting space that is the Meniere Chocolate Factory, which actually I've never been to. I saw this week that Tom Holland and Zendaya went there to see The Baker's Wife, and they just went with no security and had a really chill time, and I love that. I love when celebrities are chill, and apparently they were really lovely and chatty with everyone like normal people, and I just think that's bizarre because they are mega stars. but they just wanted to go and see The Baker's Wife, because I think Tom Holland's friend was in it or something like that. But yeah, so they've been there, so I really need to get along there, don't I? And the UK tour of Chicago has announced some of its leading cast, including Faye Brooks, Brenda Edwards and Kevin Clifton, who are taking on some of their leading roles, and it's touring the UK from October until August next year, and it's going everywhere, so many venues up and down the country. I think because it's quite a simple show staging wise, they can take it to a wide variety of different spaces and venues and old theatres and new theatres, so it's really stretching itself out across the country. So if you want to go and see Chicago again, now's your chance. We've also had new casting announcements for Stranger Things, Mamma Mia, Moulin Rouge, Choir of Man and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in the last kind of week and a half, 2 weeks. So congratulations to everyone who will be appearing in those shows over the next few months. So this week's vaguely fun fact is about some conjoined twins. Daisy and Violet Hilton, who formed the basis for the musical Sideshow, were born in Brighton, and they made their vaudeville debut at the age of 3 at the Brighton Hippodrome, where I visited earlier this week. And that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to keep leaving reviews and ratings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The more reviews I have, the better chance it will be that people will see the podcast and listen to the podcast, and we'll get some new listeners. So please do go and leave a review if you haven't already and if you are enjoying. But I will talk to you again very soon about all the latest theatre news, gossip, reviews and whatever else I might want to cover.